October 2014, I found out I was pregnant. We had just raised our first $1 million from VCs, but that pregnancy for me, which was, by the way, a surprise pregnancy, the surprise of it and the shock of it, I think beyond just being like an insane thing to deal with as a woman, was the idea of having to tell you, my co-founder, and having to tell our investors, and the guilt that came with that. I felt all of a sudden that I was completely unfit to be a leader, to be a CEO, to be a founder. It's almost as if I was a failure. This was going to be a massive barrier to me being successful. And of course, now in retrospect, years later, 3 kids later, so much wisdom later, I know it's not. And I know that this is also what makes me a great leader and a great CEO. Welcome to Unfinished Business. Hi, Lee. Long time no
Hi.
see. So today's episode is a little bit more personal. I know we focus a lot on building businesses and the day-to-day of being entrepreneurs and inviting guests that bring value to your own journey. But something that's a big part of our journey that we haven't really talked about is parenting and motherhood and pregnancies. And both Lee and I have very personal stories around this, and they've been a part of our entrepreneurial journeys, very much so. I think when we were discussing what to talk about in this episode, the first thing that came to mind for me was when I just landed in New York. I think we moved September 2014. In October 2014, I found out I was pregnant. I was just freshly landed in New York City. My boyfriend at the time, we weren't even married, didn't even have a visa to stay in the US. We had just raised our first $1 million from VCs, and we were just getting started. We were young, 28-year-olds, not really understanding how to run a business to begin with. But that pregnancy for me, which was, by the way, a surprise pregnancy for both me and my boyfriend, but also the best
Who's
thing
now your
that happened to
husband?
me, who's now my husband. And the surprise of it and the shock of it, I think beyond just being like an insane thing to deal with as a woman, was the idea of having to tell you, my co-founder, and having to tell our investors, and the guilt that came with that. I remember when he came over to my New York City apartment in the meatpacking, and I had to tell you. I mean, you're like a sister to me. And the first thing, I couldn't keep that to myself. Like, I think I told you before I even told my mom, right? I just burst in tears and told you I'm pregnant. Like, it's just one of these things. I felt all of a sudden that I was completely unfit to be a leader, to be a CEO, to be a founder. It's almost as if I was a failure, and this was going to be a massive barrier to me being successful. And of course, now in retrospect, years later, 3 kids later, so much wisdom later, I know it's not. And I know that this is also what makes me a great leader and a great CEO. But at the time, all I could think about is how I failed, how much I failed at leading this company in its first year of founding it. And I would love for us to go a little bit deeper on this, and also you sharing some of your experiences around pregnancy, but also what comes next. It's not a journey that ends at the birth of the child. It's a journey that to this day I'm dealing with on a day-to-day, even recording this podcast. Our production team is on the West Coast. It's exactly when I have to pick up my kids from school. Like, how many times did I miss my kids' swim meets and soccer competitions because I have to record this podcast, and like how to differentiate and kind of prioritize based on the business needs and what we need on a day-to-day. And parenting is probably what makes it so exhausting for so many female entrepreneurs.
Wow. First of all, I remember that conversation in your very tiny, tiny, tiny New York City apartment. You sitting down on the sofa. I didn't know what you were going to tell me, right? Because you seemed, I had
Upset.
no idea when you're like, Leah, Leah, I need to tell you
Yeah.
something. And before you could even get it out, you were crying. I hope I showed up in that moment, but I think I was probably just as shocked as you were. But the thing that was what everyone always tells me, they always are like, Lee, like, how does Alex do it? And the thing is that I know you balance it so gracefully, but I also know behind the scenes it's this chaotic mess, and that's actually what makes I think it's so special is that you have been able to raise 3 kids in the process of exiting 2 companies and building an incredible, brand in Halkin. So I think it is you're an amazing testament that you can be a very present mom, you can be a very chaotic mess mom, and you could be a great business leader all at once.
I guess so. I mean, I think everybody can. I truly think that every woman has that power in them, and I don't want people to think that it's this beautiful, perfectly
Yeah, exactly.
organized life because it really isn't.
It's a
And
shit show.
it's a shit show 99% of the time, and there were a lot of tears in the process and a lot of guilt. And there is no right way to work. There is no right way to mother. Um, and I actually it makes me uncomfortable when people say, like, "How do you do it?" Like, it seems so effortless, and it's not. It's far from effortless. It's the hardest job on earth.
Yeah, and listen, to those who are tuning in right now, one really funny story that you might not all know is that when we were accepted into this accelerator on the West Coast, I lived, Johnny and their baby Isaac moved out, and we all lived together in this little San Francisco apartment. And that was my first, I think this is why I had kids so late, because I had never been around a newborn before. And let me tell you, when you're sharing an apartment with new parents and their newborn child, it is the best form of birth control. I'll tell you that much. But but that I think that was I'll never forget when we were prepping for this the demo day for NFX, and you were tired, you were a new mom, and I was like, Alex, we have to keep on memorizing our presentation. And you were like, but I'm so tired, I can't. But you ended up doing it. But now, as a mom, I'm like, oh my God, how did I like force this new mom who's like exhausted to be like rehearsing this pitch with me all night long? Um, so yeah, that's just a funny flashback.
Yeah. Um, I think a big part of what maybe makes it look effortless on my side is the fact that I have an incredible partner, right? And that I don't take that for granted. But from day one, he was very much present and involved in building the family that we wanted to build, and also us understanding when the other one is reaching its limit. So I understand when he's reaching his limit, he's understanding when I'm reaching my limit. A lot of time people say 50-50 is the way to share the duties of the household, but sometimes I don't have 50% to give. Sometimes I have 10% to give, and me being vocal about it and telling Johnny about it goes a long way, and us just prioritizing our relationship and making sure that we do go on these date nights, we do go on these trips. So we have this tradition every year on his birthday, which also is our wedding anniversary, which, by the way, we did get married eventually after a couple of kids, but we do go on a solo trip every year, and I think that's the reset that we both need to find each other and to reconnect and just be away from that chaos, because and now we work together, right? But there's no time that's we both have that gives us the breathing room to take a step back from the day-to-day of parenting and the day-to-day of work. It just never stops. Um, so obviously the partner is a huge thing, but I'd be curious for you on your side, Lee, what you think, how your relationship between work and parenting has evolved from the baby stage to kind of toddlerhood, and you still straddling both because you have a 1-year old and a 3, almost 4-year old. But how do you feel that has it become easier? Do you think it becomes harder? Like, where do you stand on that?
Well, I think with my first, right, that year, it was in the early stages of us building Play, right, our second company, and I look back on that first year with Winnie with a bit of regret because I actually wasn't so mentally present with her because my brain was so much in the company, and I wouldn't even say guilt, it's more regret. So
Mm,
with the second one with Henrietta, I have actively been more present. But one thing that I think has been a shift uh, in this journey of being a parent while also hustling, while building a business, is I've had to actively force myself to be present at home when I'm at home and not have my brain be at work. And how I have to do that is actually like turn off my phone, right? And force myself to not turn on that phone again or look at my phone until I actively has started my workday, right? Until I drop Winnie off at school. Because for me, I actually like once my brain starts on a problem, it's very hard for me to be like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna table that and come back to it. Whereas my husband Zach, he can have a very stressful day at work and be able to be completely present at home. And I can't do that. And so I have had to learn, and it has changed my life, to turn off my phone or put my phone out of reach and
Wow.
tell myself, I'm not looking at my phone and until I do drop off. Because I just know then it just, if there's an email or an issue, it sabotages my ability to truly be present. And I look back on that first year with Winnie as of not being mentally there, like physically there, yes, but mentally I was like thinking about employee stuff, thinking about issues, thinking about fundraising. And I just have had to build those those basically safeguards to my time with the children.
Yeah, and you've been telling me that, and for some reason, I can't get myself to actively do it. And actually, guys, if you're listening, Leah and I had an idea of building a box, a lock box for our phones, and does exist, right? But we need, it's almost like you need that phone to be physically away from you, turned off, in order to not even have the temptation to look. It's really, really challenging. I think that's one of the most challenging parts is like how to disconnect and be fully present. Also, we're so used, I almost have this cognitive like uh, intensity of being pulled in a million directions on Slack and WhatsApp and email and phone calls and Instagram notifications. It's really nonstop, and I feel like that's almost the disease of our generation, to be constantly connected to so many devices and so many stimuli for your brain that you're not able to think straight anymore and be present with your family. And to the point that the only way to be able to do that is to physically take the phone away. That just says a lot.
Yeah, I on it like I was just thinking, like, as you know, like when I was pregnant with the last one, her name's Henrietta. Uh, we were doing that transaction and it was so awkward holding this secrecy of being pregnant. Like I felt so much guilt like about to do this
Yep.
big deal, selling the company and not and then worrying like when they find out when I tell them that I'm pregnant, like how will that change? But I actually think the for me, it's less the pregnancy stage that like I do have a lot of guilt and even thinking about like, building a family as a woman, you have to think about like how does it impact your career, which for men it doesn't. But I think really, yeah, the issues with having kids is like you're always it's like it starts in the pregnancy stage, this guilt, and then it just like continues onward. Because you can't be it's just impossible to be ever present if you're actually building a company and just living with that, with knowing that you're not going to be like the most incredibly involved mother ever.
Yeah, and what does it mean to be involved, right? Because I always felt like I do spend a lot of time with my kids. Like I am with them every morning. I do drop off every morning. I do have dinner with them every night. I am with them every weekend. Yes, I'd go on trips and I miss Christmas shows and I things like that do happen. But I do feel like I'm a very involved parent, and maybe that's what makes it so fucking hard, right? But, like, I always reflect on what you said, like, about being a woman and a leader versus a man and leader, and I do think it is different for women as much as we wanna say
Totally.
we're the same and we're equal and, is the journey should be equal. It really isn't equal, not from an emotional standpoint, it's not equal from a physical standpoint. It does take time to recover from a pregnancy, and that goes well. I mean, it's been 9 years since I gave birth to my firstborn, and I don't think I've had a week straight of non-interrupted sleep for 9 years straight. And yes, my husband is next to me, but who's waking up every night? I am for 9 years straight, couple times a night. Because I don't have one kid, I have 3 kids now, and there's always one that's sick, and then the one that's wetting the bed, one that's scared. That's just not it's basically chronic fatigue at this point. And how do you keep yourself optimized and the best version of yourself at work, knowing this very real physical constraint that we're dealing with because of parenting in a way that men just don't.
Well, I think what men don't have is like once you become a mother, it's this identity shift too. And I think when I talk to a lot of my friends, they become a mom. And then that's actually when they start thinking about, am I in the right job? Am I in the right career? Because they're
Mhm.
realizing like if I'm going to be splitting my time and splitting myself into a million pieces, it better be worth it. Uh, and I think for men, they
Yeah.
can like after their paternity leave, they can go back and it's not this big identity shift where they're like, who am I? Is this what I want to be doing? Is this what I want to be taking me away from my children? And I think for me, right, like this is one reason I'm so excited to join Hulkin. If you're newsflash, everyone, I just joined Hulkin as chief revenue officer, Alex's brand that she was building as a side hustle while we were building our last two companies. But I knew that I needed my next era to be fun. Why? Because if I'm going to be putting myself into a million different puzzle pieces to be a great mom, I needed to make
Mhm.
sure my workday was going to be fun. Like I didn't want to just make money. I needed to have fun making money. And that was a totally different shift than I would have felt it before kids. Before kids, I was like, money, money, money. Or no, let's build something great. But now I'm like, no, money's not just all what it's about. I need to be laughing and having fun because my home life is very stressful and tiring and not fun.
Yeah, 100%. And I do think that's what kept us going too. Like, as much as we're having fun with Hulk now, I've always loved my work. Like, how lucky am I? I've
Yeah.
never
Ugh,
had
yeah.
to really go through that transition because I woke up every day and I worked with you and we were having fun and we're solving problems and we could work from anywhere. And I think that's the beauty in of that of being an entrepreneur and being a founder, to be able to be flexible. And if you want to work from home one day because your kid's sick, you can do it. You have no constraints from that perspective. But is it fucking hard and long hours and never ending, nonstop weekends and nights? Yes. But it does have a ton of upside. And I think that's what really allowed us to be great parents as well as great founders.
Well, I think when I was just like going down memory lane with you when you were talking, I was thinking what we've been so lucky to have is we've been fulfilled. And right, the minute that we stop being fulfilled, usually the universe has a way of actually transitioning us onto
Yeah.
the next thing. And I think it's really hard. Like I'm not entirely fulfilled being a mother. Like I need to balance it with something else that fulfills me.
Hmm.
So I can, and then that's my happiness. Like when I am happy at home and then fulfilled at work, then that's my prime state of being.
It's your best self for yourself and for your kids.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Then I can come home and be happy and energized. But in the points of our startup journey where it's been really, when we've been struggling and it's been hard fundraising and I've been depleted and not fulfilled, that's when it's been very hard to parent. Right. Like then I find actually being a mom even more challenging.
Yeah, completely. I think we were lucky in that way that we got acquisition offers pretty early on in both journeys because it is exhausting. It's so fucking tiring. And we got an exit 2 companies in a row. And in a way, I think for both of us, it happened at a time where we were almost like, okay, how much longer can I do this?
I always tell you this is so at the WeWork in Williamsburg, there's like a
Mm.
handicapped bathroom, and I just call Alex and be like, I'm laying on the bathroom floor of this WeWork handicapped bathroom, literally just laying there, like trying. Like I felt so no, but this is the truth. Like if you are going to the WeWork Williamsburg, I would actually be physically laying on the bathroom floor for like 30 minutes and only in retrospect did I realize like what a state of, I don't know what kind of mental state that is that you're laying on the bathroom floor. But externally you have to be like a happy mom and a great
Mhm.
co-founder and you have to be like pushing your company startup,
And you have to be killing it and growing.
killing it. And then I just go to and I couldn't be in my office because people couldn't see me like that. So then I would just go to the handicapped bathroom in the women's room and just lay on the floor. And I think to me that is like that's what I'm like so much of this journey of being a founder is. There are moments where you have highs and lows, but then when you add being a mom in it too, it is very challenging.
And I think the fear of not being able to do it all is what blocks a lot of women maybe from taking the leap towards building a company. Um, but I really strongly believe, again, I think I said that at the beginning, every woman can do it. It's just a matter of what drives you. And again, maybe not everyone is their best selves while doing what we do, right? I think we're lucky that we found what brings the best out of us, because the best version of you and me is what our kids deserve,
We do
right?
it. Yeah. Yeah.
And if were doing anything else, I don't think that that's what they would get.
And I remember once hearing you answer someone's question, like, when's the best time to have kids when you want to build a company? And your answer was like, there's never a good time to have kids. And I think that's so true.
Literally, I had kids at the worst possible time. The worst possible time. Didn't have money, but it worked out wonderfully. Like, it's the best thing that ever happened to me.
Exactly.
But it couldn't have been a worse time. I was, we had no money. Johnny was waiting for his artist visa. He was a musician. Uh, we had just raised money, not really paying us a real salary at the time. So yeah, there is no right time. You make it right and you make it work. I think everything happens for a reason, and if you have it in you, you make it happen. One of the number one challenges that we're hearing from our audience is that dichotomy, that kind of tension between, do you want to be a great mother? Do you want to be a great founder? Do you want to be successful at raising a family, or do you want to be successful at running a company? And for some, the balance shifts towards, okay, I want to be this badass founder and have X amount of exits by the age of 30. And for others, it's no, actually, I want to be a great mother. And that's what my number one priority. For us, it was kind of both, right? Like I think my life's mission has always been to have a family over building a company. Uh, but I don't think I could have been raising that family as successfully as I am today if I hadn't had the fulfillment of waking up every day and doing something I love. But that, I think that tension is very much at the crux of every woman's struggle. Um, and how much time away from work do you want to take? Do you even want to take time away from work? What brings the best version of yourself to your home life? But we're hearing people that feel pressure that maybe taking time away from work is, frowned upon. And that's also some sort of societal pressure that women are dealing with. But it feels like no matter what you do and no matter your situation, it never feels quite right.
Yeah, and I think that's really, it goes down to fulfillment, right? Because I think when you're fulfilled, that means you're showing up in both places or one place over the other. And I think for other people, it's different. For me, I know that I need flexibility. Like that's what I really prioritize because it allows me to be flexible with my time and being able to go to things with my children and show up when I need to show up. And like, I understand that that level of flexibility
Mhm.
comes at a cost of how far I could probably get with my career, right? Like and that has changed, right? When I was younger, before I had kids, I would be all in on work. And for what I'm prioritizing now is obviously a great career, but I would do want flexibility in being able to go to what I need to go to with my children and be there with my children to the amount that I that I wanted. Not all the time, but I like that I think has been a shift for me. I know we have to wrap up here and I'm just reflecting on parenting, motherhood, building a business, taking that leap, the balancing. I think it really does come down to partnership. Both your partner at home to be able to give you grace when you've had that bad day, to help you around the house, right? Not having it all fall on you. We're both so lucky to have partners that are truly equals and also have partners at work. I think what made our relationship so beautiful, Alex, through all the ups and downs, and we've had a lot of downs and we've had some great ups, is that we've always stepped in when the other one has had to
Mhm.
take time out, whether for good reasons or bad reasons. And I've always felt that when I needed to take a pause from work, you would be filling in for me and not resenting me for that, nothing, right? You'd be totally supportive of what I needed to do on the home front. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. And I think what I hope people realize beyond just the importance of having the right partner on this journey, that there's never going to be a great time to start a family, to build a business. There's always going to be reasons why you shouldn't do it, but you can figure it out. It's going to be chaotic, it's going to be messy, but if it fulfills you, it's going to make you happier. And that's going to make you a better mom and a better partner and a better friend.
Love it.